Well, it's been a tough few years for law enforcement. Now, if you are bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, if you are still incredibly passionate, energetic, excited to wake up every morning and go to your shift ready to be as proactive and productive as possible, then this video is not for you. But I urge you, do all that you can to guard your head. Don't let any of your coworkers' negativity, don't let the media, don't let any of the negative feedback that you get from your community ever get inside your head or make you jaded. The world is a better place exactly because of people like you. Now, if you're like me or several of the cops that have reached out to me recently, then you are contemplating leaving law enforcement. And that's something that is a real possibility for you because at the end of the day, we have one life. We have one chance to make as much of an impact as we possibly can and make our quality of life as wonderful as possible. One of the quotes I play over and over again in my head is, if something stops growing you or serving you, have the respect for yourself to walk away from it. So if you have now found yourself in a position where, yes, you are in law enforcement, or if you found yourself contemplating leaving, but you're just not there yet, then this video is for you. I'm going to go over 4 steps that will put you well on your way to being comfortable with walking away from law enforcement. Because I left law enforcement back in 2017. It was one of the hardest decisions I have ever made. I'm not exaggerating when I say months of thought, months of just deep thinking, pondering, my identity, in law enforcement. You are familiar with the brotherhood, the camaraderie, just how much of your identity gets wrapped up in it. My entire social circle, they were all cops. I felt lost, I felt trapped, and I had to break through all of that in order to leave. So I'm going to share with you the 4 things that I really leaned heavily on in order to break myself free from that. Number 1 is stop giving 100%. Now, when I say this, I do not mean show up and don't do the best of your abilities. I don't mean start slacking. What I'm saying is when you are not working, when your shift is over, you go home, you do not put in any thought, time, energy, or effort into law enforcement. You use that time to work on yourself. Start reading books, start getting your finances in order, start experimenting with business ideas, start reading about capitalism and how to create businesses. I'll put a link in the description below to all of the books that I've read. I know you're not very familiar with me, but in a nutshell, the highlights of my past 3 years are: my wife and I had a baby. It was really important for us that she be a stay-at-home mom. I couldn't afford that on the law enforcement salary. Just the way that I built our lives, I wasn't able to do that. I've considered myself to be a high-achieving person, so I was very perplexed and confused as to why I couldn't provide my family the lifestyle that I wanted. I dedicated myself to reading 1 book per day until I could figure out how to fix that problem. It's been 3 years later now. I have started a few businesses, one of which pays for all of our monthly expenses. The others are extra income. We have about 60 to 70 rental properties as well. Our net worth is now over $1 million, which is a big feat from 3 years ago when I was in law enforcement trying to figure out how to get out and what in the world I would do to provide for our family. Now, I was only able to achieve that because I stopped giving 100%. Yes, while on duty, I stopped being proactive. I actually tucked my car in between some sheds on the side of a road to read 1 book per shift. Now, I still answered my calls, I filled out all of my reports, but nonetheless, I stopped doing anything extra because that job no longer served me. That job no longer helped grow me. And honestly, I was in a really negative spot just because all of the negativity in my social circle, because they were all cops, I felt like the community wasn't supportive of me, and I just did not want to be in that predicament anymore, but I couldn't figure out how to release myself from that. So start reading books, start experimenting with things that you love. One of my favorite things about cops, we're a very diverse and very skilled group, right? You can't become a cop until you are 21 years old. What did you do between 18 and 21? Were you a bum? Did you just sit around on people's couches, or did you actually work? Okay, well, if you worked, what is it that you did? Now, can you reapproach that? Can you read about capitalism, starting businesses? And now the lowest hanging fruit is revisit what you did between 18 and 21. Can you now make a business doing that? If you bagged groceries somewhere, how familiar are you with the grocery store? Can you make your own grocery store? If you were an electrician or a landscaper, can you put together a workforce and can you make your own business? These are things that you have to read about. Only you know the answers to these things, but that's the lowest hanging fruit. Now, a caution. A lot of people, since we live in America, the knee-jerk reaction is go back to school, get a degree. Do not do that. That's, by and large, a large waste of time. As you're familiar, Having a criminal justice degree does not make a cop any better, right? In capitalism, in corporate America, it's the same thing. Nobody cares about your MBA. Nobody cares about your business degree. Nobody cares. Yes, it might be a checkbox. It might help you a little bit, but really your energy, your effort, your attention to detail, your focus and commitment, that is what matters. Grow yourself, start learning how to be the best of all possible versions of yourself, start figuring out how to add value to either a new employer or society in means of a business that you're about to start by some passion project. I know a few cops that started like a clothing accessory store. It started small on the side, but then it grew into something large, which is a perfect segue to number two, which is start small or start slowly. I think the law enforcement schedule just naturally leads itself to having tons of flexibility. You have a weird schedule, you work long hours, consequently you have long hours off and several days in a row off. So you are able to use that time to, now that you're not giving 100% to your job at law enforcement anymore, now you can start focusing on yourself. You can start exploring your skills. I know some cops that started woodworking businesses. It was a passion of theirs. Now they are exploiting that. They're starting to sell that. They're learning about marketing. They're learning about, profit and loss statements. How do you scale a profitable business? How do you get rid of your bottlenecks? Those are the things that you can start focusing on once you have a business in place. As I just mentioned, the cop that started the clothing accessory store, that started small, but now he supplies national retailers. He was able to start small and then grow it, and then whenever he left law enforcement, he no longer had to skip any income. It was there. He completely replaced his job by his off-duty efforts. There are tons of examples of those. I know a cop right now who I'm really good friends with who is starting to acquire real estate. Now he's got 6 units. So soon, in the next 2, 3 years, he's going to be able to replace his full-time income with the income from his rental properties. So there's not going to be any gap. He's not giving any extra time to his department. He's solely focused on himself and building up his rental portfolio so that he can take care of his family without the stresses of law enforcement. Similarly, my wife and I started our first business in our kitchen. Ultimately, we decided that is not the type of business that we wanted to go into, but the lessons that we were able to learn from that, how we were able to walk through selling that business, it was just several years worth of experience packed into our off-duty hours. It takes a lot of energy, commitment, and just effort to be a good cop. So chances are, if you are a good cop, you already have the discipline, the consistency, the attitude, and the commitment levels that it takes in order to be successful, either by starting your own business or in corporate America, working at another job, which you could scale up very quickly. But if you're one of these cops that milks calls, takes advantage of being out of service, does as little as possible when you show up, sorry, probably nobody can help you because nobody likes you there in the department and nobody's going to like you in corporate America either. You actually might be stuck in law enforcement. But the majority of you are super hardworking, committed, and disciplined, and the world is yours. You just need to learn the ropes. And I'm telling you, it's a lot easier to replace your income than you're giving yourself credit for. Now, as a cop, you exist in like this twilight zone or kind of vortex of capitalism where for the level of services and the level of value that you add to society, you are grossly underpaid. But once you put your discipline, consistency, all of your motivated efforts into capitalism or corporate America, then you're going to be vastly rewarded. I mean, we've all met those guys on calls where, they have nice cars, nice houses, they make multiple six figures per year, and what they do is extraordinarily silly. So while that has the ability to make you frustrated when you meet those people because you are sitting here slaving away for a community that is hardly thankful for you publicly in the media, we all know that there's tons of people, the majority of the community is for you, depending on where you work. Nonetheless, don't get angry about that. Figure out how you can tap into that. Which brings us to our third reason of just taking control. Now, when I say take control, I'm talking about all of the reasons that you might have or that you might hear as to why people don't want to leave law enforcement. We often hear about how comfortable and cushy government jobs are, right? But that's a double-edged sword. You have people that take advantage of the system, milking calls, not doing anything, and then people like you that are working extraordinarily hard but not getting paid appropriately. It's time for you to take control. Those things that you hear about, medical benefits, retirement, it's not worth it. It's a giant math problem. And by and large, that is a lie. So here's an exercise that I really want you to do. Now, let's draw out all of the reasons you might not want to leave, all of the things that the department has control over. So first, the department primarily has control over your time, right? Your time off all of the time that you possibly can take, you want to put over here under your category. This is what you need to start getting control over. I think this is one of the biggest epiphanies that I had and the biggest breakthrough moments that I had when I realized that in law enforcement, all I was doing was selling my time for money. I was never going to get ahead financially because I had a limited amount of time. It didn't matter how many hours I worked, I was never going to be paid as much as I should be because it was linked to my time. Now, I've recorded a whole series. It's called How to Change My Life. And in there, I even record a video called Never Run Out of Money Again. And in these things, it's not law enforcement specific, but I go over all of the things that I think are appropriate for your mindset, how to take control of your life, have positive control over all of the things that are preventing you from living the lifestyle that you want, especially this financial piece. If you struggle at all financially, then you have to get that part of your life in order immediately, as quick as possible. Now, I'm willing to help you do that. If you want to email me, reach out to me in any kind of way, just send me an email. Put something in the description or in the subject about law enforcement. I will read that, it'll catch my eye, and I will respond absolutely as quick as I can. I'm committed to you. I also respond to every comment, answer every question. If enough people ask the same question, then I'll record another video for that. Again, I'm here for you. I want to help you in any way that I can. I know how tough this transition is. Again, one of the hardest things that I've ever done, but nonetheless, it is overwhelmingly worthwhile. The next thing that I hear a lot of people talk about are the medical benefits. I hear this is going away. A lot of people in the departments are telling me that medical benefits after retirement is not an option for a lot of the new hires. However, if you're grandfathered into that, if that's still a real thing, then did you know that once you turn 65, those medical benefits go away? So best case scenario, let's say you retire at 48. Now we're only talking about 17 years of medical benefits. Do you want to be miserable for the next 20 years for 17 years worth of medical benefits? Because after 17 years, once you turn 65, you're just going to get kicked over to Medicare. And then what are you really accomplishing here? That doesn't seem very worth it. Now, health insurance is tricky. It's undergoing a lot of changes with the Obamacare nonsense. I got burned by that. I'm a little bit bitter towards it. I understand it helped a lot of people, but nonetheless, ultimately, I was on the marketplace for a little bit. I got screwed several times because the insurance companies were just trash. They were just garbage out there. However, I am now part of what's called MediShare, the Christian Healthcare Sharing Ministries, something like that. And I highly recommend them. I'll put a link in the description below to those people if you want to look at it, because once you become self-employed or once you start working at another job where medical benefits are not paid for, yes, that is scary. Yes, if you do not do your research on that, you could heavily get burned. You could incur a lot of expenses. One of the insurance companies left me with a $40,000 bill. Fortunately, I was able to work all of that out, but nonetheless, this is something that you need to study, you need to focus on, you need to figure out how to get that over into your column. With the Christian Healthcare Ministries, I pay about $500 per month, and that's because I'm a husky fella, so I'm on like what's called a medical partner. Because with all the weightlifting I did, the height, my weight, it doesn't make sense. But I've got 3 kids, about to have 4 kids, and $500 a month I think is a great deal. I have a $5,000 deductible or MediShare since it's not technically health insurance. They call it the annual household portion. And I'm confident in that I'm never going to be out of pocket more than that annual household portion. They've been phenomenal to work with, and truly, I'm so thankful for them. Nonetheless, MediShare helped me slide this over here. I'm now no longer scared of the medical benefits. Now, retirement, that's the last big thing that I want to discuss here. Now, you make this list as long as you want to, but get as many things over here as possible. There's a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I would highly recommend that you read that book. Ultimately, in a nutshell, horribly paraphrased by me, it's that the more positive ownership that you take over your life, the more successful that you're going to be. Stop letting other people control you by having control of all of the things in your life. I would venture so far as to say that the more things that are over here and not under your category, the less happy that you're going to be, because you have control, true positive control over so few aspects of your life. So whatever holding you back from leaving the department over the next few months, few years, however long you would feel comfortable in walking away from your department, then you figure out how to take control over all of these things. Retirement, let's talk about that. Now, the pension plans that I'm familiar with, a lot of departments are doing like 80% of your highest 3 or 4 years. So if you're making $100,000, then in the highest 4 years, then your department's going to pay you $80,000 for the rest of your life. If you're 48, that might seem like a phenomenal deal. But at the same time, take a few steps back and realize that this is just a math problem. If you work diligently, if you focus, if you work hard, if you read up on financial instruments, if you read up on retirement programs, real estate, then this is just one giant math problem. And I guarantee you that the people that are in charge of the pension funds, the people that are in charge of investing your money, are making a significant amount of money, more than you ever will see from that pension or retirement fund. So if that's true for them, how can you tap into that? How can you start making more money off of your retirements now than they are? About a year and a half after I left law enforcement, I cashed out all of my retirement savings. I no longer have a 401k. I no longer have a 457. I don't even have college funds for my kids. Why? I've invested all of that in real estate. Again, we've got 60 to 70 properties now. That is going to pay for all of my kids' college. There's a tremendous amount of wealth generation just being generated by those real estate investments. I've got businesses that recurringly pay my monthly expenses. And at this point, because I've tapped into the passive and residual income, again, things that you need to learn about, things I'd be happy to explain to you, I have taken positive control over this retirement. What do you need? $3,000 to $5,000 a month to live off of? Okay, well, how can you start working on that and start tapping into the passive and residual income now to start making the $3,000 to $5,000 a month that you need? And don't wait 30, 20, 30, 40 years in order to get to the point where now you're making this passively, right? As soon as possible, you need to disconnect from the time for money issue, because you're never going to get ahead if all you're doing is selling your time for money. Not to mention, with your pension plan, the city's in charge of that. The city can kind of recall or cancel that at any given time. Now, that would be highly frowned upon. That would be a political disaster. But nonetheless, if the city or municipality, wherever you work, if they go bankrupt, who's going to be stuck with the bill? It's not going to be them. They're going to be okay. It's going to be everyone's pension programs, right? And the majority of pension programs are already underfunded. You should read up on that as well and educate yourself on all of the things that could go horribly wrong with your pension or your retirement funds. So let's say something like 2008 happened. A lot of good cops that I knew that were cops back in 2008, their retirement savings got cut in half. Who was held accountable for that? Who's going to help those cops retire? Nobody. If you were in one of your last years in 2008 trying to retire, that was detrimental. That completely changed the trajectory of your life. One of the best sergeants that I know, he once he retired from the department that we were working at together, he went on to work 2 other jobs just to make ends meet. Don't be that person. You have to start planning right now as soon as possible. And the more you plan, the harder you work towards getting retirement over into this category, the more you're going to realize that you do not need your department. You do not need your employer. You can make enough money passively to sustain your family in 3 to 5 years. All right, whatever other reasons you have for not being able to walk away from law enforcement, figure out how to take positive control over those. Okay, now the fourth thing that you need to do, this is one of my favorites. I'm a huge fan of Stoicism, and one of the pillars of Stoicism is to go ahead and make peace with the worst possible outcome. We've mentioned the strong subculture of law enforcement a few times now, and one of the worst stigmas you could have is leaving the department and then coming back, right? We've probably have somebody in our department that has done that at least once, maybe even twice. Nobody likes somebody that just keeps bouncing around departments, right? The grass is greener, the grass is greener, the grass is not greener. They come back. It doesn't really matter. Make peace with the worst possible scenario. So when I left, it was the first wave of like Ferguson, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of those things. So naturally, nobody was lining up at the doors to become a cop. I took advantage of that, right? Because I knew I had a phenomenal resume. I mentioned that I went above and beyond in law enforcement. I was an FST instructor. I was a DRE. I had a really fun time. I made the most of it. I loved arresting drunk drivers, impaired drivers, and I loved teaching other cops how to do that. So that left me with a pretty good resume. If I wanted to, if I needed to, then I could crash and burn and find myself a job at almost any other department. Now, yes, I would probably have a small pay cut at that time. However, that's okay because it would still provide for my family. We could move to a smaller house. We could, eat rice and beans forever. Or we could go completely belly up and lose everything. I don't know what your worst case scenario is, but whatever it is, go ahead and form a plan around it, make peace with it, and understand that you have the ability to fix it, even if it's a really horrible situation. Now, to the last point about making peace with the worst possible outcome, if you are 35 or younger, then you should probably, and you're thinking about leaving law enforcement, you should probably go ahead and do that. You should be a little bit more cautious if you're over that age because you're closer to the age of retirement. But if you're 35 or under, you have your whole life ahead of you. You have over a decade, you have over 2 decades to correct any missteps or mistakes that you make while you're trying to leave law enforcement. You're going to be able to lose a lot financially and still recover before it's time for you to retire, before you start losing a little bit of steam, and before you just lose a lot of motivation. So yes, I left law enforcement, I cashed out my 401k, I went all in on real estate investing in my personal businesses. I have made peace with me going bankrupt or belly up. Now, I hope to never do that, of course, but at the end of the day, one of the things that I always told myself was understanding the time for money, the future value of a dollar. I recorded a video about that called Wealth Formula. You should check that out. Just learn the formula that I'm talking about. All that to say, because I was so young, I was 27 when I left law enforcement, that leaves me so much time to make a tremendous amount of money and still allow that money to grow inside of a stock market or just invested at 8 to 12% on an annual basis. I hope this was helpful. Take a look around the channel, find some other videos if you find those helpful. Again, I've recorded a series about how to change your life. I've recorded a series about how to get started in real estate investing. I'm doing my best to be extraordinarily helpful for all those people that want to change your lives. I'm not going to ask anything from you. I don't want your email. I don't want any money from you. All I want to do is help you unlock the best version of yourself. Again, do not hesitate to reach out to me. My email is ryanaingram@gmail.com. If you need something, again, just put law enforcement in the subject line or something thereabouts, and I will respond to you as quickly as possible. I'm here for you. I'm committed to you. Again, every question, every comment, I will answer those. What do you need to live your best life? You've got one. Don't spend it on an ungrateful department with negative coworkers. Don't let your future be determined by the direction the wind blows, or whatever that quote is. Take positive control, change your life. I'm here for you. Can't wait to talk to you soon.